Welcome to Business Matters, a program produced by the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce in conjunction with ActonTV. I'm your host, Kathleen McDonald, Executive Director of the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce. Business Matters is a program which features chamber members and highlights information important to businesses in the Middlesex community. And today I have the true pleasure of welcoming to Business Matters State Senator Eileen Donoghue and State Senator Jamie Eldridge. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to
Good
see
morning.
you.
Great. Senator Donoghue is a Democratic member of the Massachusetts Senate, where she has represented the 1st Middlesex District since 2011. Senator Donoghue is an attorney and a former city councilor and mayor of the city of Lowell. And Senator Jamie Eldridge is a Massachusetts state senator serving the Middlesex and Worcester districts since January of 2009. Previously, Senator Eldridge served as state representative for the 37th Middlesex district. And prior to election to the state representative seat, Senator Eldridge worked as a public interest attorney with Merrimack Valley Legal Services in Lowell. So can you both share with our viewers a little bit more about your backgrounds and how you came to dedicate yourself to public service?
Sure. Kathleen, thanks so much for having us on, and
You're welcome.
I really appreciate all that the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce does, and I know that just recently saw you with the awards dinner. My background is I think similar to a lot of elected officials. Is I got my start when I was fairly young, working for someone who was running for the state senate. So that was former state senator Bob Durand, who was the senator for this district. So I worked in his campaign and I interned for him, and really just appreciated the ability to help people and bring people together to achieve a common good, and really sort of caught the political bug early, and planned to run for office very early on, and had the chance after law school to run locally in Acton on the Housing Authority and Planning Board, and then eventually, as you mentioned in my bio, to the House of Representatives. So that's how I got my start, and still see former State Senator Bob Durand as well as former Senator Pam Reeser as really mentors for me in guiding me into government service.
That's great. How about for you?
So my story is a little bit different because I didn't catch the political bug early. I was a practicing attorney first in Boston for many years, and then in Lowell. I'm not from Lowell. I'm originally from Western Mass in Holyoke, Massachusetts. But what I found was, as Jamie has mentioned, helping people, trying to work through problems. There's a certain satisfaction you get in terms of practicing law. But when I moved to Lowell, I became involved in a lot of nonprofit organizations, not with any political affiliation or intent, but active in the community. And so I had no plan or intention to run for public office, and then I was encouraged to look at it by our neighbor, Paul Songus. And so he actually was one of the first people to kind of get myself and my husband involved in some of our local nonprofit organizations on board and serving on boards and the like. And then as time went on, he kind of dropped that idea of maybe running for political office. And to make a long story short, I did do that, and I ran for the city council.
That's wonderful. The Songus family is such an incredible influence to so many, just tremendous. Tell us, in addition to Paul Songus and in addition to Bob Durand and Pam Reeser, what kind of influences did you have? Was there inspiration and some other models in your life that helped to promote your drive to be of service to others?
I would definitely add my mom. My mom was a kindergarten teacher in the Acton Public Schools for about 27 years, very involved in community service. And actually one of the first things I sort of got involved in as a volunteer is she had started the South Acton Cleanup Day, I think around 1986. And I got involved with that, and then actually when I got back from college, I turned that into a town-wide event. And actually this very week, Acton is, because of Earth Day, is doing the Cleanup Day. So it's something I'm still involved with, but I think my mom's commitment to teaching, to giving back in the community of Acton really inspired for me an interest to run for public office and be in public service as well.
What an example that she has set.
Absolutely.
Great. That's great. How about for you?
You know, I think there's certainly an element had to do with growing up in a large family. I'm one of 8 children, and was always, you know, encouraged to be involved in activities, whether it was back home in Holyoke at the time. But then as I got more involved in the city of Lowell when I moved there, I was very impressed with the dedication so many, including Senator Tsongas, brought to the table. There were just remarkable role models of people who, you know, from Patrick Mogan starting the national park, people doing park cleanups in every single neighborhood, just banding together for whatever the need was. And so that inspired me, both those names that you'd recognize and then just the people who were just putting in their time and being involved in their community. I was tremendously impressed and moved with it, because I think I saw firsthand that people can make a difference. You know, you don't have to wait for someone else to do it. They can make a difference in their day-to-day lives and those of so many others. And that, to me, continues to be an inspiration.
Yes, the power of the individual is so strong, and the ripple effect is tremendous.
It is. And I think sometimes people who think, you know, they don't have that type of power, you know, you just want to tell them you absolutely do. We don't have to wait for Washington to tell us what we need to do.
That's great. That's so heartwarming to hear those, you know, your stories of what's brought you to your place now, and now you're the example going forward for so many others as well. Tell us what cities and towns your district is covering, and we can go from there.
Sure. In addition to the city of Lowell, I also represent the town of Groton, the town of Pepperell, Dunstable, Tingsboro, and Westford.
Great. That's a nice geographic.
It is. It's a very diverse district.
Yes, yes, yes. And how about for you, Jamie?
Yeah, my district, which is just south of Eileen's, is 14 communities, and as you noted, both Middlesex and Worcester counties. So it's Acton, Boxborough, Harvard, Littleton, Ayr, Shirley, Sudbury, Stowe, Maynard, Hudson, Marlborough, Westborough, Northborough, and Southborough. So sort of the 495 Route 2 Mass Pike district.
Yeah, I noticed that. You've got some major thoroughfares right through your district.
Yes, yes, allows me to get to meetings quicker.
Great, great. I understand both of you are now serving on the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, and also the Senate Committee on Ways and Means, but that's only one among many other committees. Would you just like to cite a few other committees that you work on in terms of the state government?
Sure. You know, in the Senate we serve on many, many committees, but we do focus in terms of chairmanships on specific committees and vice chairmanships. I currently in this term chair Steering and Policy, which is a committee that is kind of uniquely tasked with the under President Rosenberg of working with every member of the Senate, trying to come up with what his or her individual priorities will be for this session, as well as their committee priorities, and then working with leadership to try and advance those priorities. So it gives a view of the entire kind of landscape of the legislation that will be coming before the body in the next 2 years. I also was appointed chair of the new committee on export development and supporting export development. And it's brand new, so it's a joint committee with the House, and we're now going through the process, due diligence, really investigating, documenting what we have here in Massachusetts for companies that export. And I think sometimes we think of the very large companies as being the exporters, but in fact, it's every size and shape of company, and they stretch all across the Commonwealth. And it makes up for, right now it's about a $25 billion a year industry, and employs about 110,000 people. So it's a significant imprint in terms of our business community. And we want to, our goal is to try and support those companies and expand hopefully on what they're doing and help them in a way that maybe state government can do a better job of. I also serve as vice chair of the Committee on Higher Education, which I've been in that seat since I came into the legislature. And that's, you know, been a very important committee to me because I think higher education is something that is really key to the future of the Commonwealth for businesses, for jobs, for job growth and development. I also sit on Ways and Means, as has been mentioned, Rules, which is a Senate committee, Tourism, Arts and Culture. I'm also sitting on. When I first came into the committee, into the Senate, I chaired that, and so came to know communities all across the Commonwealth and what the tourism and cultural communities were offering, not just in terms of entertainment and the like, but really in terms of jobs in the economy and the economic drivers. And so that's to mention a few. There are several others, but those are a few of the focuses that will be my focus in this next session. Last term I chaired Economic Development and Emerging Technologies. And so, continue to work hand in hand as far as export with the current Committee on Economic Development.
Yeah, that's really a duality there.
Exactly.
Wonderful. How about Jamie?
Yeah, and I just want to say to Eileen's point is you get a sense of how many committees in the leadership roles that senators take, and I really want to commend her on the new position of being chair of the Steering and Policy Committee, because that really guides the Senate's agenda, as well as Eileen's work on the Economic Development of Jobs Bill last session, which was very helpful for this whole area in the state. The committees that I chair the Financial Services Committee, so that oversees everything from regulating banks and financial institutions to health insurance mandates, proposals to cover more health insurance problems, to looking at some of the more new industries like the TNCs, Uber and Lyft. So we passed a law last session regulating that. So I chair that committee. I serve as the vice chair of the Senate Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change, and we're going to have a hearing soon out here, I think, in Sudbury, to focus on that issue. And then I serve as the vice chair of the Community Development and Small Business Committee. So looking at how can we best serve small businesses, but also looking at things like zoning reform and how do we encourage sort of sustainable or smart growth that allows for more affordable housing, while allowing communities to also better plan how they would like their communities to look. And then I actually just got back last night from Washington, D.C. as a member of the Senate Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. So we went down to Washington, D.C. to meet with the congressional delegation, including our Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, to talk about the impact of the federal budget on the state economy, the fact that 1 out of every $4 of our state budget is from federal funds. And so if we see cuts at the federal level, that will have an impact not on sort of basic human services, but the economy overall. So those are the committees that I serve on. And then the last one is the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agricultural Committee. And that's really a legacy of this district. Both Senator Duran and Senator Reeser chaired that committee. And when I think of this district, a lot of the focus by voters is on open space and clean energy and protecting our air and water. And so I serve in that committee as well.
Wonderful. Tremendous influence on all of these committees. Wonderful. Great work. Senator Donoghue, you filed more than 400 bills for this 2017-2018 legislative session.
It was actually 40.
What did I say?
400.
400?
Yeah. But that's
oh my
okay.
That would be.
It's sometimes, there are so many bills
Added
filed.
an extra zero. You wish, right?
Yeah.
And Senator Eldridge, you filed 88 bills and co-sponsored 849 in this session. So speaking specifically about the legislation that you've both put forward, and in terms of the specific impact on businesses, can you talk specifically to some of the bills and how you see the direct influence into the business community?
I'm happy to start. Yeah, so a big focus that I've had on terms of supporting the business community is about infrastructure, looking to secure more investments, whether it's transportation, including things like the new South Acton, Littleton train stations, and building rail trails, which I think help support small businesses by getting more people across town and city borders. And then the other issue, which sometimes doesn't get a lot of attention, is water infrastructure. And the reality is that neither the state nor most towns or cities have the funding to increase or improve the water infrastructure, which is really critical to allowing businesses to grow.
Yes.
And the example I always give is I represent Devon's, and a key reason that the pharmaceutical company Bristol Myers Squibb came to Devon's is Devon's, because it's run by Mass Development, they have their own water utility, and so they were able to provide enough water to allow that company to produce the drug it produces to combat Alzheimer's disease. So the bill that I filed related to that is it would charge a fee for water withdrawal across the state from anyone who uses water, and that money could be used to improve water infrastructure. So upgrade sewers, protect our drinking water, upgrade wastewater treatment facilities, and that's one of the things. Whether you're talking about building more housing or supporting businesses, a lot of them need that water infrastructure in order to grow and prosper.
It's significant in their choice whether they're able to locate in certain locations in towns.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. How about the legislation you put forward?
Sure. There's a couple of bills that come to mind. One is called Mass Made, and this is a bill that actually passed the Senate last session, and we'll try again this time to get it over the line. And what it is, it's for small businesses who manufacture or produce goods of any kind. It gives a one-stop shopping for people who are looking for something made locally. Too often we hear the small businesses who are doing a great job, they just don't have the ability to market on a wider base. Sometimes that's the link that's missing for them. And so other states have done this, and it seems to make sense. Many people, consumers, would like to buy something that's locally made or crafted.
Yes.
They don't know where to look for it. We've heard, stories of someone who, is buying a widget for their business, for example, and they find out, and they buy it from either outside the state or outside the country, and then come to find out it's actually manufactured down the road, but they had no idea. If we had a place, and oftentimes people who want to buy a gift or something locally, so it's everything from manufactured items to other kind of creative items that someone could go to in the state and find out what's mass made, and then it would help the business, it would help the consumer, and so we're really hoping that that can, it's just a little boost for small businesses that they don't have right now. Another bill that I filed again, this actually passed both the House and the Senate last term. The governor vetoed it, but we've worked closely to try and get it over the line. And that has to do with the formation of community business districts. I think sometimes we are familiar, of course, with the business investment in districts, which are difficult to create. We've only created a few since the law went into effect several years ago. This makes it more flexible for communities. And really what it is an organization, a nonprofit organization of community businesses and in an area that can decide themselves in terms of regulating themselves what types of extra services that maybe the municipalities whose dollars are stretched too thin can't provide. One example is signage, for instance. Sometimes that's something that the community businesses very much would like, but the local government just doesn't have the wherewithal to provide to the extent that the community would like. So if we can give communities the ability to form these districts, it's autonomous in the sense that they decide, the municipality does not decide the use of the funds, they decide and they monitor and marshal the use of the funds. The other thing that a community benefit district does that's different than a bid is nonprofit organizations who want to can belong to that. Because oftentimes, the same needs, whether you're a hospital or an educational organization, it may be in your best interest to join forces with those in your. So that's something that I have refiled, and again, it came very close to becoming law, and I think I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that maybe it can become law this term.
I think that's great that it's all-inclusive to profit and nonprofit sectors. That's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's a key.
Yeah, wonderful. From your perspective, what needs to be put in place in order to help encourage new businesses to locate in Middlesex West and in Massachusetts in general? What can be done?
Well, I would say, first of all, I think this region really is seeing more and more businesses come to, sort of generally Metro West and North Central Mass, the districts that sort of areas that I cover. And so I think it's largely been a success story, and I think that's because we have great schools out here, all things considered, a good transportation system, and communities are willing to put in the investments they need. In terms of how we can better support small businesses, I think certainly a lot of towns and cities have improved their outreach to small businesses. A lot of towns, like Acton now, have someone who's just assigned to focus on how do we create a more business-friendly community. So I think that's been great to see. I represent the city of Marlborough, and through a tax on all the hotels there, they have hired an economic development coordinator that's helped attract companies like General Electric, Quest Diagnostics, and TJ Maxx. So I think having a point person is very helpful. At the state level, we have Mass Office of Business Development, a lot of other different agencies. I certainly think that the administration has generally done a good job, but I think doing a clear job of communicating to small businesses how they can start a business, how to maybe develop a business plan if they need that, and the different loans and tax breaks that could be eligible for.
Yeah.
I think far too often it's just the large companies that benefit from those, and I'd like to see more small businesses benefit from those.
And that really requires a level of education and awareness as the first step. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, and if you're busy just starting your new business, it's hard to keep up with all the different benefits or resources that the state has to offer.
That's great. That's great. How about you, Eileen?
Yeah, I think as Jamie points out, infrastructure and transportation are important too, especially this area. We have a tremendous workforce in terms of highly educated, skilled workforce, and I think this district, the Metro West district, it really epitomizes that, something that businesses will want in terms of locating. When we passed the economic development bill last year, it's a 5-year bill, but a large component, 50% of the $1 billion bill was Mass Works grant money. And that's a tool I think communities can use to try and help infrastructure that will trigger or leverage business development. We did have a $2 million grant that Groton and Air received, and that was to put in sewer, infrastructure that will then beget businesses in an area that could not develop without that infusion of capital. So I think those, MassWorks, because that was a $500 million authorization, is a pool of money that's available to communities that that the state will administer. But shouldn't be overlooked, because sometimes it's that piece that you haven't been able, a town or towns, and I think it's particularly if towns can band together if it's something that's going to benefit both of them. I think that's very helpful. In transportation, the more we can do in terms of, I know in Westford, there's certainly a large presence of high-tech companies that are busing at their expense employees from the Cambridge and area. Can we do a better job with our regional transit authorities to try and fill in those gaps for companies? And I think that's something we need to continue to work on.
Yeah. And I think that's wonderful, as you said. Some specific issues and concerns are town-centric, but many of them are regional. And being a regional chamber, we hear time and again, and we can work with our business community, very similar issues that are coming up. Several, businesses, their employees, quality employees that they want to, hire and retain, they're coming. They can get so far on public transportation. They get to the town, but they can't get literally to work. And so, I'm hearing time and time again how important the infrastructure for transportation is. Another thing is signage, because visibility, as we all know, is so key for businesses. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right.
So the signage is key, and you know, and having a proactive government structure on the town level, state, federal, that's really encourages businesses in terms of the regulations and policies that are adopted. I'm just citing some of the specific issues that I hear time and time again that aren't town-centric but are regional and more likely statewide as well. Do you have, I know we've already spoken to some of this, but even more so, some solutions that you could recommend for further legislation, but that would specifically address some of these issues that businesses are facing?
Yeah, it's a big question. There's so many areas. I agree with Eileen's point about the infrastructure, and the Mass Works grants have been very helpful. The point development in Littleton, in part, was made possible because of a Mass Works grant for improving the road along the way that Representative Jim Arciero and I, who represent Littleton together, worked on. So I think that certainly there's a lot of discussion right now at the State House about the liquor license and alcohol reform, and that's an issue where we have a lot of craft breweries coming to our districts. The town of Acton just asked for over 20 liquor licenses because you're seeing a lot more restaurants come to the area, but there's a fairly arcane process both of approving liquor licenses through the legislature but also just allowing the sale of alcohol. So just as an example is that a bill that I passed a few years ago allowed the sale of local wine, farm wineries, to be sold at farmers markets, and now we're trying to allow that for craft beer because you have a lot of craft breweries that would like to sell their products at farmers markets, just like freshly grown vegetables or fruits, but they can't because of a very outdated law. So I think updating those kind of laws I think is really critical. And I think I'd mentioned before, but just getting back to the technical assistance is if someone wants to start a business, and certainly the chamber is a resource, but what are the resources at the state level to help someone with the business plan, or maybe a loan or a grant to help them get them started? Yeah,
so important to support our founding organizations and businesses. Great. How about, do you have any other thoughts, Eileen?
Yeah, I think those are great thoughts that Jamie just mentioned, and I think the idea of working together, communities when they can work together is going to be helpful to leverage dollars. But knowing what's available is really a challenge sometimes. So certainly if we can do a better job to work with the communities and let communities know. I hear from my towns, especially the smaller towns, working through a process, whether it's a Mass Works grant application, can be cumbersome. And so those are some assists that I think we could give. One other area that I think indirectly supports business, and that I think Jamie mentioned it already, is zoning. And one of the challenges so many communities have is people who want to live and work in the community just can't afford, especially young families. Some of the communities are priced and zoned in such a way that they can't do it. If we could address that, so that, and I think there's certainly some proposals on the table. We've done some work in that area, but we can do more, because as a state, we certainly want to keep all of our talented young people, and middle-aged and old as well, but we want to keep them in a place where they can afford to live and raise their families.
And absolutely, so critical to, it's a direct effect to the business community.
Yeah, we do hear from businesses, oftentimes millennials are eventually saying, I can't afford to live here. They're looking to other parts of the country. And so, I think it's something we need to do sooner rather than later.
Yes, yep. And different tiers of housing, and not a myopic view.
Right, exactly.
In terms of housing is really important.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. I understand the budget has, can you give us an update on what's transpired and the hallmark of this year?
Well, the House the House passed its budget. The governor, of course, had proposed his back in January, and the House just put finishing touches on their budget this week. and they ended up somewhere in the same range as the governor, $4.2, $4.3 billion budget. And now the Senate has its turn. Ways and Means will get to work on the Senate version, and we take it up the last week of May or toward the end of May. I think what is key about the budget process is it is a process, and it starts with each member of the Senate bringing in what their priorities are for their district, and Ways and Means trying to put that together, keeping in mind the priorities of the state and the needs of the state. And of course, the biggest challenge we face is healthcare costs. And I think it's 40% of our budget now, thereabouts.
Exactly.
And so the increase in healthcare costs has pretty much eaten up any increase in new revenues that we've seen. And this has happened for the past several years. And so that's a challenge that we have to face. And there's so many fixed costs in the budget that trying to get to those all-important discretionary spending items and do it in a way that's fair to all those folks, I think is going to be the challenge. I'm confident we will get it done, but in addition to the healthcare costs, we have a rising opioid epidemic that continues to challenge us as far as how we address it, and this affects every community across the Commonwealth. So those are some of the things that I see will be on our radar in the days and couple of weeks to come.
Yeah, I agree with Eileen, and one of the things to realize talking about that process is that the House and Senate Ways and Means committees, which are separate, they come together for hearings across the state. So so we've each been part of those hearings across Massachusetts to hear from the general public, to hear from state agencies, to hear from advocates, and all that has a real influence and effect on what is the final budget. So I would add to what Eileen said is that I think on the Senate side there's a look at properly funding K through 12 schools, Chapter 70 formula. The Senate really took the lead on that last session. And when you think about why do people move to this part of Massachusetts, it really often is about the quality schools.
Yes.
And then we're beginning to have a conversation about universal pre-K. If we're really serious about making sure that young families provide their kids with the best possible educational opportunities, it's best to start young when the child is 3 or 4. So that's something that the Senate's also taking a look at. But it is a tight budget, and because of those possible federal budget cuts, it's going to be difficult to begin to make those investments.
People, I think, need to realize how much willingness to work together, how much compromise is required to finalize a budget, to pass legislation, that it's when we work together, collaborate and coordinate together that we can, make overall progress.
Absolutely.
And it's so important. And in that spirit, collaboration, as we all know, is a two-way street. So in terms of turning it around and saying, instead of looking to government on the state or federal level, what government can do, how can the Middlesex business community and the community in general proactively collaborate with state government to create these positive outcomes and the necessary improvements we're all commonly working towards?
Well, certainly the Chambers of Commerce actually are, of course, a great source where we're going to Chamber of Commerce events and getting feedback and suggestions and critiques and concerns. The district I represent has 6 chambers of commerce and try to get to all the different events. But that's certainly a point of interaction. And certainly having the business community, come up to the State House for lobby days and voice your opinions on all the different bills that are before us, I think is very helpful. We've certainly heard, as you've highlighted, the need for more investment in transportation infrastructure and water infrastructure. So we really heard those calls and made some investments, but obviously much more work to be done.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, again, if the Middlesex West Chamber has the same or similar needs as other chambers or other business groups. I think there's importance in critical mass, and the more because there's so many asks down in Boston in terms of those scarce dollars, but the more you can weigh in with us directly, not necessarily always a unified voice, but if there are common needs, packaging those in a way and messaging them through your membership, I think is really important. And whether and I agree, being able to have representation on the Hill is really important. People are knocking on our doors all day long, sometimes into the night, and advocates looking for their needs, but. Even if it's emailing, and I think if legislators can see that this is a real need in the business community, that's important too. Because I think, generally speaking, every member of the legislature recognizes how critical our business community is to the future of the Commonwealth. It just is plain and simple. You're the ones who are creating jobs. You're the ones who are creating revenue for the Commonwealth, and so what we can do to support you is going to be so important. So we can do things like universal pre-K or opioid addiction or things that providing services. It really does come back to where the rubber meets the road, and that's the business community.
And working together, to have that voice, that collective voice.
I think so.
So that you understand the magnitude of the concern rather than single voices here and there.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful feedback. Thank you. Thank you so much. Take a turn from what we're talking about, and I know both of you have been or currently involved in your communications through community access television, the power of television and the power of educating and informing our citizenry. Tell us about your experience as far as your effectiveness of Half Hour on the Hill and Beacon Hill Buzz. Yeah, tell us how that's played out for you.
Yeah, I think it's been a good opportunity to communicate with all of our district in and around a topic that would be of interest to them. I find it really efficient and helpful to bring somebody, whoever that guest may be, into people's living rooms so that they get to see it, not just one shot, but they get to see it over the course of the month many times. And there's what I have found is there are certain regular watchers of community access cable, and that creates some information out in the community. And then sometimes people you were surprised watched it. You will hear from them. So. Television is a very powerful, medium to reach our constituents, and I think it's immensely helpful. And I'm very grateful to community access cable television, both where I generally produce mine, which is in the city of Lowell, but it is distributed throughout my district. So, I'm eternally grateful for their cooperation.
Yeah, that's great, the cooperation between community access centers in terms of spreading the good news and spreading the
and I think one issue that we dealt with last term, and will probably still, I know for community access television stations, they're very interested in getting high def and better placement on the dial, so to speak, so that there'll be more people who will be able to access and see.
How about for you, Half Hour on the Hill? How has that experience been?
Yeah, it's been very similar to Eileen's experience. Is the Half Hour on the Hill, which I produce here at ActonTV about once a month. And I think often with cable access TV, most of the content is focused on local issues, school committee, town meeting, board of selectmen. And I think it's very critical for state leaders, including legislators, to focus on state issues, larger bills that have an impact on many communities in the whole state. So I think it's a great way to do that. And I certainly get feedback from people who watch the show, and of course these days with the fact that as elected officials we have to be sort of on every aspect of social media, whether Facebook, Twitter, websites, is that it's a great way to broadcast the show on all those media, if you will, and get even more feedback from people.
And our chamber members are finding that too. Yeah, yeah.
I would imagine.
But you have to multitask in terms of the many different social media channels.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Back to thinking about the next generation, thinking about the leaders that we are hoping to foster and promote. What would you say to someone who is maybe where you were previously in your lives, considering public service, considering this as a career? What kind of training and what kind of education and words of wisdom would you offer?
I guess I would say, as someone that really benefited from mentors very early on who were involved in politics, is that I think what's great about politics and government is that it's fairly easy to get involved, to be an intern at the State House, to volunteer in a campaign, and really have a fair amount of responsibility given to you. And so that allows you to translate that into, is this something I would like to do to run for office? So I think that it's fairly easy to get involved and really encourage young people to do those sort of things.
That's great.
I concur, completely with that suggestion. I think volunteering is an easy in believe me, you won't be turned away, I'm sure. And I think that could also apply to community organizations and nonprofit organizations, where you get to know your community on a different level, and volunteer, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or Girls Inc. or any number of organizations, so that you see a different aspect maybe than you normally do in your community, and get to know the needs as well.
That's great. So we always have to be thinking about that big picture, and the fact that we're all examples, and the power of the individual, that we're all examples of what we can do in terms of impacting not only our families' lives, but those all around us in our communities and at the state and national level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much for coming to Business Matters. We're so appreciative of your taking the time from your extremely busy schedules, and so appreciative of the information you've shared and the challenge that you've given to the business community to have that connection, to create that loop, that to be at the State House during those lobbying days, to have a voice. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Appreciate having us on.
Thank you so much. I would like to highlight to our viewers 2 chamber events that are taking place in June. On Friday, June 9th, Star Custom Framers in the Stowe Shopping Plaza will host our June Business Breakfast Club networking event from 7:30 to 9 a.m. This is a great opportunity to make connections so vital to your business and your career. All are invited, and members are $10 and non-members are $20. You can register online at mwcoc.com or call the Chamber office at 978-263-0010. Also, on Wednesday, June 14th, please mark your calendars for an event from 5 to 7 p.m., the Chamber's Professional Women's Network, which is having its quarterly program hosted by the Courtyard by Marriott at the Point in Littleton. And the program will focus on financial matters with presenter Laura Fickett of Fickett Financial Coaching, offering her expertise to the Professional Women's Network. All are welcome to attend. Members are 15, non-members are 25. And again, you can register online at mwcoc.com or call the Chamber at 978-263-0010. Following a brief break, Business Matters will feature a retrospective of the Chamber's Award Celebration and Scholarship Fundraiser that took place in February, and also our 28th annual Chamber meeting and luncheon that just took place in April on the 12th.
Do your part. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank today.
The Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce held its Evening with the Stars award celebration and scholarship fundraiser at the Westford Regency.
Presenting our next award is Sherry Gould of Gould Law Offices in Littleton, a longstanding member of the Chamber and the Middlesex business community. Sherry is a longtime friend of our award honoree, and it is a pleasure to welcome her.
I'm honored to stand in for my cousin Marvin Gould to introduce our next recipient, Mr. Robert Moran, as Business Person of the Year. I cannot think of a more worthy recipient for this month's coveted award. Bob Moran, Business Person of the Year.
Well, I'm not one for talking a long time. I thank the Middlesex Chamber for giving me this award. It's very nice. I run my business with my heart, and if it wasn't for the customer, you wouldn't have a business. And that speaks for itself, and I'm very happy to be here. I do miss George down at Marvin's. I miss Marvin too. He used to have a cookie jar in the store, and every now and then I'd go for a cup of black coffee. He always had cookies there. You pressed a button, a cookie would come out at Gould's clothing store. Anyways, I thank you, and I don't know what else to say. I thank you very much.
Tony, your life of commitment and service is commendable. You offer a stellar model of a life well lived in service to others for all of us to emulate. Everyone in the chamber is richer for your tremendous contributions and example. Tony, on behalf of all the members and staff of the Middlesex West Chamber, it is with tremendous gratitude and appreciation that I present you with the Chamber Member of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Wow, what can I add to that? Nothing, really. All I can say is thank you. I would like to thank my staff, because without them, I wouldn't be able to be a part of the chamber. The chamber has been a great advantage to my business, as I'm sure it is to a lot of you guys. I want to thank everyone here for nominating me, or whoever nominated me. Thank you. And what can I say? To those people out there that are not members, what are you waiting for? Join the chamber. Join the chamber. It will give you visibility. It will grow your company. Come on, be part of the group. My say is that, you know what? You do business with people you know. So get to know us and grow your business. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask Ray to come up, please. Do you want to speak first?
I know that applause was on the last speaker. It's not because I'm up here. Thanks, Amanda. Chamber board members and staff, chamber members and distinguished guests, most importantly, my fellow award recipients. It's a humbling honor to be here this evening. In preparation for tonight, I did a brief review who has recently won Lifetime Achievement Awards. Florence Henderson, David Bowie, Arnold Palmer, Muhammad Ali, Glenn Fry, and Mary Tyler Moore. It's a very disturbing trend. In our area, only 50 or 60 years ago, we were commonly considered farming communities. In fact, did you know that the first recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award was a farmer? He was always outstanding in his field. Suffice it to say that generations Y and Z won't be collecting this award for another 40 to 50 years. I consider myself very fortunate to have been brought up by wonderful parents who instilled in me the values of hard work, honesty, and common sense. My mom and dad were great role models, and I wish my dad was here with us, but I can thank my 87-year young mom who is here this evening. Yeah, like usual, a louder applause than I get, right? And I also wish to thank my wife, Kathy, for putting up with me during those times when I most question myself and when I'm at my most vulnerable. She's everything anyone could ask for as a wife, a mother, a teacher, and a friend, and she deserves this Lifetime Achievement Award way more than I do. My 4 kids and their husbands and significant others are here, and Coach Smith, thanks for coming. A business owner is only as good as the staff, and over the years we've been blessed with outstanding employees, caring individuals who have repeatedly helped our customers when they needed it most. No one likes to pay an insurance bill, but when tragedy, disaster, or disruptions appear, our staff has always been there for our customers. To my fellow award recipients, I am humbled to share this podium with you. You truly run the spectrum of success, sacrifice, integrity, and entrepreneurial spirit. Not only are you great businessmen and women, you're the ones who answer the call when your towns and communities need your support, whether voluntarily, philanthropically, consolingly, or in leadership. Make no mistake, small business is the backbone of our nation. And this evening, that stiff back is represented brilliantly by the award winners and the many chamber members in this room. So thank you, Kathleen and the staff, Middlesex West Chamber, and your commitment to those small businesses, and it's an honor to accept this award. I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
George, for the Talk of the Town, we are here at the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce annual meeting and luncheon at the Westford Regency with Executive Director Kathleen McDonald. Tell us what's going on today.
Well, George, we have a tremendous event today. We're celebrating 28 years of being a regional chamber in Middlesex West County, which is tremendous. And we have a wonderful event. We have a keynote speaker, Jamie Trowbridge, who's president and CEO of Yankee Publishing. And he's speaking on Yankee Publishing, a story of survival, which I'm really excited about hearing. In addition, we celebrate our wonderful members' anniversaries in the chamber. We have 33 members who are celebrating either 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25 years with us today, which is exciting.
And what's great about the chamber, too, it's a way of businesses to connect with each other and get their name out to the community. And tell us a little bit about that.
We're here to serve the business community, both individually and collectively, to see the Middlesex West community thrive. And we do that in a number of ways through networking, business education, business development. We have wonderful annual events where people have tremendous opportunities to, again, make those connections that are so vital to your business.
And if you want more information, make sure you visit their website at mwcoc.com. And we're going to show you highlights of today's annual luncheon. So stay tuned for that. And don't forget to check out your show,
Business Matters,
at ActonTV.org.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kathleen McDonald, Executive Director of the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our 28th annual meeting of the Middlesex West Chamber. I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here today. Together with the Board of Directors, I am proud to be leading this chamber, which is strengthening the 8 communities in our region by voicing support for and advocating the promotion of business. At this time, I would like to ask those members celebrating 5, 10, 15, and 20-year anniversaries to please come forward to the front of the room. So, Acton Recreation Department celebrating 5 years. Alphen and Santos, Bullock's Nursing Services, Burton's Grill, Caprera Law PC, Coldwell Residential Brokerage, Concord's Tea Cakes, Emerson Dental, Fitting Fitness Inn, Great Spaces, Levine Pirro Law. In addition, other members that are celebrating 5 years are North Acton Dental, Northbridge Insurance Agency, Northeast Numismatics, Spound Development Associates, TD Bank, and Westford Community Access Television. Celebrating 10 years of commitment to this chamber is Emerge Coaching for Success. It's right there. Juice Plus, KAC Accounting Services. Congratulations, KAC Accounting Services, our wonderful bookkeeper of the chamber.
And now, it is my pleasure to present to you the new president of the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce, Maura Haberman.
Thank you, Amanda. It was a pleasure to serve as your vice president this past year. She's done a wonderful job, and I've got some big shoes to fill. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to serve as your new president. This is truly an honor, and I will work hard to exceed any expectations that this position holds. I look forward to working closely with our new vice president, Jeffrey Turcott, and Peter Myler, Jen Scobo, Kathleen McDonald, and Jolene Sullivan. I've met a lot of wonderful people through the chamber and established many solid relationships with our local business community. I like to say how proud I am to be a member of this vibrant chamber, and I look forward to seeing you at various networking opportunities and special events throughout the year.
I hope you enjoyed our program. Please join us at Business Matters in July as we feature other Middlesex West Chamber members and their businesses. Thank you for watching Business Matters. The Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce would like to acknowledge and thank our broadcast sponsors, Emerson Hospital and the Regency Hotels.